afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. It's In the Zone. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, dynamic duo. We're back in the zone, and we talk hoops here. A lot of people talk a lot of different topics, a lot of different stuff in the sports world. We just talk hoops. So if you're looking at Stephen A. Smith and Wilbon going at it in that heavyweight bang out, we're not really going to get into that too much, but that has been a little bit interesting. I think the name calling hasn't been all that great, but pretty interesting to watch that whole thing dissolve. Pete, we're going to jump right into Feed 'em Fish, NBA. We're going to jump right out there. Couple of mentions here in the MVP race. We want to go and show that Luka has really stepped it up in the last couple of games. Giannis is doing great things, although the Bucks have lost 3 of 4. So there's a lot going on in the basketball world. A little while ago, we referred to it as a snow globe. I don't even know what it is today. If you look at college basketball, it's a full-out glacier. It's a full-out glacier. And we'll get into the NBA stuff, but if you look at also, they have the Wooden Awards out and the halfway mark. And so they do a little bit of an assessment at the halfway mark for the Wooden Award. And that tells us almost it's Groundhog Day in college basketball that we're halfway through the basketball season right now. And that has been meteoric. That has been unbelievable pace and speed to the season. There's been so much going on in and around the game that it just makes it so exciting. One of the reasons I was excited to start the show. And we're going to jump in right now. I wanted to mention also in this segment that Damian Lillard, you know, if he wasn't playing with Giannis right now, you might want to give him some great consideration as well. He's averaging 25.1 points a game, 6.9 assists, and 4.3 rebounds. Those are great numbers across the board. He has moved into Milwaukee's lineup very smoothly and really done a great job there, I think. So I just wanted to mention him. He's not going to be in anybody's MVP consideration, but actually having a really good year. Dirty Draymond Green has been lifted of his suspension by Adam Silver, and I wanted to take Adam Silver to task right now because Draymond, in their meeting, had mentioned that he had given thought to retirement.
Really?
And he said at that moment, yeah, because especially if the suspension was going to be a really long one. And he sat down and said Adam Silver talked him out of it during the meeting, and he said he thought he was making a decision that was based in that moment, you know, more than looking at it through the full perspective. And I want to say to Adam Silver, you should have left yourself out of it. Let him retire, let him go. He's not good for the game right now in the way he's trying to hurt people, in my opinion. So Dirty Draymond was talked out of retirement. I'm sorry to hear that. We have some injuries to report. Joel Embiid is got some nagging knee injury. Tyrese Halliburton, my guy, I had this guy also up there as a possible MVP candidate, was having a tremendous year. I don't want to show it on the show, but people can look for it. This young man went down on an NBA floor where it might have been wet. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but his right leg and his left leg wound up as far apart from themselves as they possibly could in a split that I'm not sure Nadia Comaneci could have handled. Ooh. And every guy in America watching that knows exactly what we're talking about. That was a banana split all the way through, and especially in the region of the groin area, that's very difficult to really manage moving forward because it's a recurring injury sometimes. So they're saying 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, I would say. I'm hopeful. But also Ja Morant, just back off of suspension, has now been listed as out for the year due to a shoulder injury. So that's not going to help the Grizzlies much. That's not going to help anything that's going on down there at all. The Raptors coach had a great press conference the other night because he was in a game where his team shot 2, maybe 3 free throws in the fourth quarter while the Lakers shot 24.
Wow.
And he went crazy. Probably going to get a pretty stiff fine for criticizing the officials, which I think those fines should absolutely be taken out of the game. You should not be able to criticize somebody or fine somebody for exercising their First Amendment right. And to just say that that was 24 and this is 2, and say that I don't think it's right, he should be within every word of his rights to be able to say that, in my opinion.
That wasn't a harsh criticism, though, really, if that's all he said.
And sometimes when you shine the light, it's where that they don't want it to be, you know, and so that's when they react the most, is when you put it right up in their nose and say, hey, are you fixing these games? Are you trying to get the Lakers in the playoffs? What are you doing?
Right.
You know, if it wasn't LeBron James's team and Anthony Davis's team that they so covet badly to get into playoff contention right now, you'd say, nah, it was just a bad day. But the things swirling around the NBA, they're not helping themselves, Pete. They're not helping themselves. Kawhi Leonard, $153 million extension for 3 years. He is in on Jaylen Brown level territory. I like the 3 years because he's had some injuries, been around a really long time. He's a great player. If that's the rate of the contract, Kawhi Leonard certainly is willing, is deserving of that contract. All right? So in the Clippers situation, they're one of the hottest teams going on right now. They just signed one of their great players, who's now Harden. They brought in Harden, who's they consider one of their 4 kind of horsemen in there. They just signed one of their great players to $153 million. At the end of this year, Paul George and I believe it's Westbrook. Yes, Russell Westbrook are player option for them to return to the team. So they'll have the option to return, and that number is going to be significantly up in the air, probably right around Kawhi's number. And then you have our guy James Harden, who just came in, and he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So there's a lot going on in Los Angeles Clipper territory.
Should I just keep playing the cash register sound?
Just keep going. But at some point,
when does it end?
You will not be solvent. Mm-hmm. At some point, you're going to lose money. Now, all the profit sharing, all the other stuff that goes on, I'm not sure that's ever possible. But at some point, I mean, the television contracts are huge. I understand that. But at some point, you know, that's going also. That's why sitting courtside costs $1,000 now, folks.
True enough.
That's part of it. That's why sitting courtside is no longer for the regular person. That's why sitting courtside is now an elitist entity, because you can't afford to sit there. They've outpriced you.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Okay, so Luka, Giannis, probably right now in that MVP. We're looking at Wemby and Holmgren as our rookies of the year right now. We did throw Jamie Jaquez in there. Brandon Miller, although he's toiling in obscurity with the Charlotte Hornets, is having a pretty good year too. So I just wanted to make mention of him. All right, here's some things that are going to absolutely just, I think, be a little shocking to people, especially people that have followed the game in the NBA for a long time. Right now, the Celtics on our Power 15 are the number 1 team, and they are giving their opponents 110 points per game. They're giving up, on average, 110 points per game. The only team in the NBA, and they're in second place in our Power 15, that has an average of under 110 are the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they're at 107.
So we called it, as the beginning of the season, the no defense league.
Defense is dead.
Yep.
Gone. Obliterated. It's like in the NCAA with Cinderella. They're trying to put Cinderella back in the dungeon. They have absolutely put an assassination attempt on defense in the NBA. It's about keeping us healthy. It's about, hey, you don't want to get another guy hurt. You're competing against those guys. The old NBA, Isaiah Thomas went out with 65 stitches across his forehead from an elbow from Karl Malone, also returned to that same game. So there's a little bit of a difference here. But here's one that's going to, and again, they have 6 wins, so it's understandable. But the Wizards are the league low, and they are offering up to their opponents a very, very generous 125.9 points per game. That's what happens when you walk into the Wizards, Capitals, whatever their name is now, the Bullets, the Wizards, whatever the Washington team has changed their name to now. A little difficult to keep up with. The Commanders, I think, is their football team.
Yep.
But now They're 125.9 per game, giving up to their opponents. That's player of the week material. You get to play down in D.C., you get to be player of the week. I'm not sure the move to Virginia is going to help that. You have 6 teams north of 120 points. 6 teams north of 120 points. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. NCAA fish, Pete. Whole lot going on there, man. Oh, my God. Number 1, 2, and 3 that we had in our top 25 last week all went down. They went down. I wanted to talk about recruiting for a minute because everybody talks about Cooper Flagg and the great recruit that's going to Duke and a lot of other players that get a really good mention. Dylan Harper is the third listed recruit and the son of Ron Harper, and he's going to Rutgers. But I wanted to make mention of 2 players that I had the chance to look at a little bit recently, and I'm not sure, you know how you go with 1, 2, 3, 4? You know, I'm not sure that, you know, they got this right on some of these guys because Ace Bailey, who is also going to Rutgers, he's listed as a number 2 player in the country. I got him at number 1. He's unbelievable. He's tall, can do so much on the floor, athletic, really, really good. And he comes from a really good program down in Georgia as well. Jaleel Bethia is attending Miami next year. Again, a really, really, really good player. I think he might be as good as Cooper Flagg and some of those other guys as well. Tonight you got a couple of marquee matchups. There's not a ton going on in the big time because you're looking at generally a lot of leagues adapt Wednesday, Saturday schedules. So Wednesday's a huge day. Saturday, it's one of the problems with the officiating as well. And I hear this from assigners who were assigners of officials. The pool on Saturdays is just so low because everybody's playing. So you go through all the officials you have, and then you're grabbing this guy and that guy. If schools were more inclined, like the MAC used to and some of the other schools, I think the Ivy League might still do it, play some Friday night games. Play some Friday night games. That would be really exciting. You'd get better officiating.
You'd probably get better TV coverage, too.
You'd get coverage. You'd get coverage because nobody else is on. 100%. 100%. Now, tonight you have Michigan and Maryland, good Big Ten shot, and then you got Michigan State at Illinois. Really, really good games tonight. I think those will be exciting games. There's been a couple of different conference surprises now that we're into league play. Just early on, you know, we're talking about 3 or 4 game subset here, but there's been some really, really interesting looks here. Like North Carolina State played North Carolina the other night. They were at home. I thought North Carolina would win the game, and they did. But North Carolina State was 3-0 at that point, and nobody predicted that they would be that high. Right now, sitting at 3-1, the Wolfpack's doing okay. Carolina has stepped their game up in the ACC, emerged as the number 1 team, 4-0, doing pretty good. Wake Forest just took a loss, but they were 3-1. Wisconsin's 4-0. St. Peter's in the MAC is 4-0. That's a little bit of a surprise. And then you have Oregon and Arizona State. I think Arizona State dumped one last night, but I'm not 100% sure. But they were both 4-0 in their respective conferences, and I don't think that people had them off to that start as well. So it's interesting. Here's something that I think people in the Big East will find interesting. There are no more undefeated teams in the Big East right now. There are no more league teams that have a 0 on the loss column in the Big East right now. We told you the Big East was going to be tough during the year. We were 100% right in our prediction of that. Everybody's got a loss. Everybody's been marked up. And if you look at some of these road trips these people are taking, Houston went into Iowa State the other night. Kansas, UCF, they're getting bumped up on the road, and it's tough on the road right now. One of the reasons it's tough on the road also is because it's intercession. The players don't have their normal vibration on campus. So when they get off of campus, they're stuck in some hotel, difficult to go into an opposing unit with 15,000 hostile fans, and a lot of the different things that go along with being on the road, some of the difficulties that coaches, players face that we won't mention right here because I don't want to get in trouble. But the Big East is a mosh pit right now. Pretty good. I want to give mention to LIU Brooklyn. They're 2-0 in their league. Last year, they were listed 363rd in KenPom. And so Rod Strickland and his group are making progress, and we're excited about that for them. Terrence Shannon, has asked for a restraining order against his own university, their board of trustees, and has asked to be reinstated to play because his claim to this whole thing around the assault that took place is that this is an alleged assault. He hasn't been found guilty of anything, therefore should not be sanctioned at this time unless further time it is found that he's guilty of this crime, and then certainly should be sanctioned. Okay? This is a downside of the NIL as well, Pete, because these young men are millionaires now. And ask anybody who's in the NBA and read any of the literature that the NBA gives out to their rookies, and you'll know that these young men are now being targeted to a certain extent. You will know 100% that some of these young men are being targeted. Now, that's not to diminish a lot of the bad things that go in and on and around sports. But right now, you're going to have some situations that come out, and right here, this is one of them. I think we should wait until everything has been resolved before we start to go through this, because I think there's enough evidence on both sides that we should wait for due process. That's an American tradition. It's an American right. I think we should wait for that in this case and others. We were having a battle on NCAA Feed the Fish, Feed 'em Fish, to see which team, whether they would be winless or undefeated. And we are sorry to report that the young and winless have won the battle. There are no more undefeated teams in college basketball. Mississippi went down. Houston went down. Oregon, Oklahoma, a lot of the teams that have been doing really, really good before they hit their conference. Mississippi was 13-0. They took a loss just the other night. But those teams now, and again, we talk about a little bit of a mosh pit, but that's where we're at in college basketball right now. And the undefeateds are gone. The winless, the young, and the winless still remain. Detroit Mercy has not won a game. I believe they're at 0-15 right now. Mississippi Valley State, we dug into this a little bit last week, but now they're in kind of where their normal water play would follow, and they're really, really not, not going to have a good season now, based on this. It's really, really tough to get off the deck after we've reached the halfway point of the season and you haven't won a game. Okay. We're hoping. We're hoping, because I don't want to see anybody go through that. That's difficult. That's really, really difficult. Okay? So we talked about the knick-knack, paddywhack, give this dog a bone. We got 3 of the top teams in the country out, and we're going under a little bit of, we're going to go back into the 80s here with Boy George. I'll tumble for you, because they tumbled almost every top 25 team that we had in our Power 25 last week. The AP 25, the coaches 25. Ken Palm is scrambling with his algorithm. We really tore him up a little bit last week with that algorithm. I'm going to give him another hit today. But I'll tumble for you. Number 1, Houston goes out at Iowa State. Iowa State is a very good team, people. If you got an NCAA bracket and you want to start to get into Joe Lunardi and some of those other things where you start to prepare, you're a crazy fanatic, and you want to get your March Madness thing all set up, check out Iowa State. They're really good. They're really good. They gave Houston, that was a great basketball game. Houston plays great defense. Iowa State met the day, met the challenge, and it was an absolute great basketball game. Houston came all the way back with their defense. Really, really hard to convince players these days. This is why I say defense is dead. It's a problem, because you can't come back from a deficit unless you play defense.
Yeah, there's no other way. You got to make up possessions.
You have to stop, right?
Yeah.
You have to stop the other team from scoring. Otherwise, you lose. So every time you get in the hole, you lose unless you play good defense. That's why I talk about it. Purdue, every time these guys have gotten up against any kind of hostility, they folded. I'm a little concerned about this team right now. Zach Edey is still the Wooden, right now, Player of the Year candidate, but they lost to Nebraska the other night. And here's another team I'm going to tell you, if you get see how the season shapes out, but Nebraska, that team's playing good basketball. That team's playing good basketball. Fred Hoiberg's coaching there, and they're doing all right. Excuse me. Kansas, we were really concerned about UCF and some of those other teams that joined in, Cincinnati and some of those other teams that jumped into the Big 12, and thought it was really, really going to be a shock to the system. Well, Kansas found out that UCF wasn't that shocked. They came up to the Big 12 and came right in and gave one of the big dogs a big knock. We had Kansas in our top 5, and right now we got to tumble them out. Tennessee, they had them number 4. They lose to Mississippi State. Oklahoma was number 5. They tumble to TCU. Marquette, I'm really, really lacking with this team lately. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with this team, but I'm not in love with it. And I like this Butler team. This Butler team, coached by Tab Mata, came back out of his Ohio State retirement, and he's doing a great job with this team. And Clemson, every time Clemson gets up against a tough one, they lose too. So they were 21st, and they lost to Virginia Tech. Player of the Year, Wooden Stuff, we'll give it to you right now. Zach Edey is number 1. They're looking at Kyle Filipowski and Hunter Dickinson from Kansas and from Duke, respectively, both having very good years. I like R.J. Davis from North Carolina to get some consideration. I love guards, and I'd like to see a little bit of guard play in there. Edey, Filipowski, and Dickinson are all over 7 foot, and R.J. goes about 6 foot. So I like him. He's averaging 21 points a game, and he's the number 1 reason that North Carolina is doing what North Carolina is doing right now. He's doing great things for them. And you got 2 freshmen that are on the list as well, which I thought was very interesting. You have Jacoby Walter from Baylor, who is listed on our draft board as very high if he decides to come out. And you also have surprise freshman Kentucky Reed Shepard on the list as well. Don't think any of those young men have a chance, but not bad. Not bad to be on that wooden list as a freshman, for sure. We'll see if Jacoby Walter hangs around and go from there. But right now, we're going to jump into the NBA Power 15. We're going to go into our statistics in the NBA as well. Not a whole lot of movement in the statistical front, but we brought in a couple of different statistics this week that we hope you'll understand, like, and enjoy. Right now, Pete, off the top strand of the ring rope, in the Power 15, we have the Boston Celtics. They're holding strong. They are 29-8. They're playing at a very good clip. Again, we talked about them being the number 1 team while allowing their opponents to average 110, 111 points per game. It's mind-boggling to me. Minnesota Timberwolves, the only team with a sub-110 points per game for opponent, and they're the only team right now that's, really, really sustaining that you didn't think they would. Some of the other teams are bouncing around here and there, but the Minnesota Timberwolves are the surprise team of the NBA. They come in at 26-11. And now you see our subset, our cohort, get a little bigger here now. Now you're looking at almost half the season. Be approaching the All-Star game soon. You're looking at a really, really good look at what's happening in the NBA right now. Here's the team that's rising really, really quick. The Oklahoma City Thunder. I moved them into the 3 spot. They're 25-11 right now. They're doing really good stuff. They have one of the most exciting players in the NBA right now. We talked about Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They call him SGA. We're not talking about Student Government Association. Talking about maybe the best one-on-one player in the game right now, and he is absolutely killing it. You'll see his name come up in several places when we do the NBA stats leaders as well. So Denver Nuggets moving up into 4th. They got 12 losses. They're 26-12. And I watched them last night get absolutely bombed in Utah. Coach Malone didn't look happy. Some of the body language on the players wasn't very good. Very difficult to repeat. Very difficult to repeat, Pete. And that's what we're seeing right now. Milwaukee Bucks in the number 5 spot. They slid a little bit because of that recent loss of games that they have. They've lost a couple bunnies right there, and that dropped them down a little bit. But they're hanging in 5th, 25-12. Everybody'd like to be 25-12 at this point of the year. Another high-rising team, James Harden, has really elevated. We have to give credit where credit's due. I'm very critical of Harden, but right now it seems like this might have been a pretty good fit for him. He's out in L.A. The Clippers are 7-3 in their last 10. They're 23-13. They're tied right now with the 76ers. And you say, Rich, if you have 2 teams that have identical records and you jump them into your Power 15, how do you break that tie? And I'll tell you very, very simply. I look at 2 metrics. I look at their last 10 games. And in the last 10 games, they're 7-3 and holding up pretty good. And then I look at what their win or loss streak might have been. The 76ers, I moved them down because they're 5-5 in their last 10, and they've lost 3 in a row. So that's why I bounced them down. They're tied with the Clippers, 23-13 as well. good record. But with Embiid's injury, I don't know what that forecasts for the team in the future. That's going to be rough if he's out for any extended period of time. Sacramento Kings, another surprise team. We got the Wolves. We got the Magic. We got the OKC Thunder. And now you got the Kings. They're four young, really, really youth-driven teams that are doing really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. And that's why I kind of feel bad for the Memphis Grizzlies, because I thought Ja Morant in that young frame as well, was really going to move that team forward, and that team might be one of the teams we're talking about right now as one of our Power 15, as opposed to one of the teams we're talking about as below the Mendoza line, well below the Mendoza line. So the Pelicans, our favorite NBA name, the Pelicans are in the 9th spot, 23-15. Zion is Zion. They're 7-3 in their last 10, and they've won 2 in a row. Indiana Pacers. Let's see how they can sustain the loss of Halliburton, because he'll be out 2 to 4 weeks. Right now, they're hot. They've won 2 in a row, 7 out of their last 3. I mean, they're 8-2. 8-2, and they've won their last 2. OG Anunoby, we love this trade for the Knicks. It's paid off. We moved them up into the 11th spot. The Knicks are 6-4 in their last 10, but they've won 5 games in a row. Brunson playing at a high level. Randall playing at a high level. Anunoby gives them that other piece that you can't focus in on those 2 guys. And I really, really like what they're doing there. The Cleveland Cavaliers coming in, led with our favorite New Yorker, Donovan, 21-15, 7-3. They've won 3 games in a row, doing good stuff. They're really in playoff contention, and I don't think I had them there at the beginning of the year. The Dallas Mavericks, Luka, holding tight, 22-16. They've struggled recently, though. Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic take up 14-15, 21-16 for both of those teams. The Magic are playing really good basketball coming up. The Heat kind of bouncing around a little bit. Below the Mendoza line, I was surprised to see this. Said it a few times. Atlanta Hawks really not doing well. They're 15-21. The Golden State Warriors, with or without Dirty Draymond, 17-20. They will not make the playoffs if the season ended this year. I think that would be a shock to a lot of people. But they're also having some franchise issues. Look at Coach Kerr's face, and I think you can see some of that. The Memphis Grizzlies, now with Morant out for the year, at least that creates a little bit of stability moving forward, that they know he won't be back. They know they won't have him. They can now plan and kind of recreate their lineup around that. But you're looking at somebody who's 12 games back and, 4.5 right now, almost 5 games out of the playoff contention. So they're 12 games out of first place. Okay, we're moving into this new little segment that we put in, and it's called Crate and Bottom of the Barrel. Crate and Bottom of the Barrel leaders are the Detroit Pistons. They are, hold your hat, 3-35, and Cade Cunningham has just taken up with a bad injury. Probably going to be out for a little bit of time. He's been the guy that's kind of holding everything together there, but 3 wins and 35 losses. The coach, saying the right things at the press conference, but not sure how much longer he can survive under those conditions. The Wizards, both of these teams have lost 6 games in a row, giving up, well above 120 points per game. 6-31 for the Wizards, 8-27 for the Charlotte Hornets. The San Antonio Spurs, I'm so glad they thought Pop would stick around for Wembanyama's rookie year, but they're 6-30. They're 6-30, and they're struggling. That whole group, again, grab your hat, grab your baseball cap, turn it around. They are 23-123 this season.
How does it wear on your psyche to be on a team that's losing that badly? As a player or as a coach?
If you're on a college team, it's awful. If you're making millions of dollars and every Friday that check cashes, I don't think it's too bad. If you're going to give me $1 million, like coaches, they're getting millions of dollars. And if they fire this guy from the team that he's at right now, in 6 months he's going to wind up with another team with another $1 million contract.
So paycheck more than pride?
I think it alleviates some of that pain.
Okay.
You know, I think it does. When you're a millionaire, I mean, God, you know, hey, we lost a ball game. How relative is that?
Yeah, true.
You know, these guys are probably more upset when the stock market goes up and down. That's what really probably upsets them. All right, let's jump into the stats. We're going to go quickly through it because not much has changed. The scoring: Embiid, Doncic, Antetokounmpo. There's our guy Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, 31.4. Kevin Durant still holding on to the 5th spot. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander also leads the league in steals. Donovan Mitchell is 2nd. Kawhi Leonard 3rd. Melton D'Anthony is 4th. Nobody knows who Melton D'Anthony is, and nobody knows who Thibault Matisse is. Thibault Matisse, I know, but he's 4th and 5th. Those guys are 4th and 5th in steals. Rebounding: Sabonis, Domantas Sabonis, 12.7, leading the league. Anthony Davis from the Lakers in 2nd. Rudy Gobert in 3rd. The Joker, 11.8, and Embiid, 11.8. The thing that happens with these averages is when you're out, your average doesn't go down because it's averaged into the amount of games you've played.
Oh, okay,
so if
gotcha.
they don't average in the games that you didn't play, then it doesn't go down. So while these guys are out, their numbers won't go down. The only chance is that you might get eclipsed by somebody else who is playing and is putting up better numbers than what you were putting up at that time. That's the only way it can happen. 3-pointers made, I love this one. Steph Curry, 158, nobody even close. Luka, 135, closing gap maybe a little bit. I think that gap has been 23 the entire time we've been talking about this almost. I'd love to go back and research that. Desmond Bane, Memphis Grizzlies, kind of toiling in obscurity. He comes in at 120. Paul George, 117. And Klay Thompson joins the list for the first time, 116. I don't know that it's a surprise that he did a lot of that scoring while Draymond was out. 3-point percentage. This is why I want to read this one. Malik Beasley, 1st. Durant, 2nd. Grayson Allen, 3rd. Norman Powell, 4th. Doug McDermott, 5th. It ranges from 47.7 down to McDermott at 45.8. You know what's really interesting to me about that? That none of the players that are high in the percentage are on the made list. Not one of them. Highest percentage is Malik Beasley. He's averaging 47.7 of his attempts. Almost half of his attempts are going in, and he's not even in the top 5. That's interesting to me. So it matters about attempts. It matters about how many times do you actually get to shoot the ball. Your assists: Tyrese Halliburton, Trae Young, Joker, Doncic, and Nicky Van Fleet. So I thought that was interesting part. But here's something that I thought was a little more compelling as I dug into the stats, because every week we read those for you, and there's not a lot of change. You know, the stats are what they are, you know, and there won't be a lot of change, I wouldn't imagine. Joel Embiid might wind up with the scoring title. If he doesn't, it's probably going to be Doncic. I don't think anybody's going to come out and start putting up 60-point games, although the most points in a game this year is by our guy Giannis, and he's done it twice. You ready for this, Pete? 64 and 54.
Whew.
Unbelievable.
Whew.
Unbelievable.
That's a one-man butt-kicking machine.
He's something else. And such a great representative of the NBA. Such a great representative of the game. If that's the guy you have representing your game, you're in good shape. I said it, and I compared him last week's show to Tiger Woods, Tom Brady, just great pros. They understand what they're doing, and they represent your game in such great fashion. Now, here's a couple of things that I jumped into on the stats that I thought were pretty interesting. The highest percentage of your points that comes from three-point shooting. So this is all of your scoring, and what percentage of your scoring is in three-point shooting?
Whatever team Steph Curry's on.
No, these are individuals.
Oh, individual. Okay.
Individuals, and Steph Curry's not on the list.
Wow.
So, because Steph Curry gets his points all over the place.
Yeah,
he
I
scores
guess
a lot
so,
from
yeah.
the free throw line. He does get into the rim on occasion. But these guys are strictly three-ballers. 76.7 of this young man's points, Malik Beasley, come from three-point range. That's 75% of the points that you put up come from three-point range. Dante DiVincenzo from the Knicks, our Villanova guy, same, 70.7. Buddy Hield, 66.4. Duncan Robinson, 63.8. And Mike Conley, 63.3. I'm going to give you a Duncan Robinson trivia question. Who is the only person that I'm aware of that has been in a Division I and a Division III NCAA basketball final and lost both games? Duncan Robinson.
That's pretty crazy.
Duncan Robinson was in the finals at Williams College, very
Okay.
locally.
Yep.
And he also did it with the Miami Heat and also with the Michigan Wolverines. So he's got a trifecta there of losing, but great losing.
Yeah, right.
Okay, percentage of your points that come from mid-range. DeMar DeRozan, 25.9% of his points come in the mid-range. I always thought the mid-range had really gone away. When you look at 25.9, it kind of validates that. Brandon Ingram, former Duke star, 25. Middleton from the Bucks, 25. DeAndre Ayton, 21. I was a little surprised at that because he's predominantly low post. Kevin Durant at 20. I was surprised. Now, here's your percentage of points that come from 2 points. DeAndre Ayton, 91.1% of his points come from 2-pointers. He ain't shooting threes. You got Jacob Podol, Ivica Zubac, Nick Claxton, and Clint Capella. They go all the way through, all the way down to 84.3. Unbelievable.
Those are wild stats, though, when you dig into the numbers.
Crazy when you get really down to it. It shows how the game has really, it's not even bifurcated. It's just kind of compartmentalized into these little things where you have your shooters, your low post guys, your guys who drive it, those guys who kick it. It's a bit predictable right now, unfortunately. All right, so we are going to jump right into our NCAA top 25. And this was the most difficult top 25 that we put together all year because everybody's moving. Everybody's grooving. It's like a 1980s discotheque in college basketball right now. Everybody's doing the hustle. So, where do you go when your top teams 1, 2, and 3 fall? You have to look at the metric and say, did anybody else kind of come up in there and take that spot? And for that reason, for that simple reason, and also for the reason because I love their defense, I'm keeping Houston number 1. They lost by 2 points at Iowa State. Very, very close game. Represented themselves well. They're 14-1. Yeah, they lost a tough game there. Maybe the only tough game they've played all year. But right now, nobody else kind of jumped in there and took that mantle as well. Purdue lost. Kansas lost. And so right now we're going to move and we're going to hear them down in stores. The Huskies are howling. Huskies are howling because they're playing good basketball. And right now, Connecticut, I moved them up into number 2. Auburn, I love this team. I love this team. Their coach is crazy. Their fans are crazy. And I think half their team, if not all of their team, might be a little crazy too. But I love the way they play. They bring the enthusiasm. They play hard. They get after it on both ends. I like Auburn. I moved them up into the 3 spot because they're 13-2. They whacked Arkansas the other night. They've had some really, really good wins. Check them out. And if you want to see some good inside play, check out their big guys. They've got some really good big guys in there. Purdue, we love the big men. Zach Edey, Player of the Year candidate right now. They got some issues, though. They got some issues because when you have a player that's that much better than the rest of your other players, it's difficult to try and figure that all out. And as a coach, Matt Painter made a great comment. He said, that, at Nebraska fans got a little excited because they beat Purdue and they stormed the court. And if I'm a coach and people keep storming the court every time that I'm out there and we lose, I'm a little bit concerned about that as well for health and safety reasons for my players. I'm not sure I want to send my players through a handshake line. I'm not sure I want to leave my players out there while people coming from an opposing team who generally dislike them are going to come out and flood the floor and be that close to them. Okay? I'm really concerned about that. Painter alluded to that. This was something I thought Painter really, really illuminated that I thought was interesting. He said, no freshman, sophomore, or junior on our team has lost a road game where the court has not been stormed. Now, that's a credit to his program, a credit to where they've been, but it's also, I'm not sure how you're going to get a handle around this thing, but I'm not sure that storming the court stuff's too good. They do it on the football stadiums. They go in, they wreck the stadiums, and I don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you stop it, but it's concerning. And Painter kind of painted a picture of it that wasn't great, and I think they should address it a little bit. I don't know what the answer is right now. I could sit here and I really couldn't tell you. You could find the schools. I don't think that stops it. I don't think the students would care one bit. So I think it's something that is going to require some deep thought and some deep legislation, and I don't think there's too many people that are associated with this that are capable of that. So Baylor, I love 13-2. They're jumping around, playing great defense. Them and Houston, I think, are probably the two programs right now. UVA had it for a while, but they've kind of fallen off with it. But their defense is really, really spectacular. You watch Baylor because they're just doing such great stuff on their ball screens, on their down screens, cross screens. That's effort. That's intensity. But I'll tell you what else it is, Pete. It's trust. You have to trust your teammates, and they're trusting their teammates and playing great defense. I got Baylor in the 5 spot. I really like this team. Kentucky, 12-2. They're hanging on. They've got a mercurial squad out there, but Reed Shepherd's really, really kind of solided them up. And Dillingham, that young man can fill it up. When you say somebody's a bucket, he's a bucket. He can fill it up, and he can go. And so I think that they have an exciting team. I'm interested to see how their league schedule takes care of them, but they're doing well. They're doing well, and I'm going to move them up. Like I said, if the Blue Bloods are doing what the Blue Bloods are supposed to do, we'll reward them. When the Blue Bloods go out and start banging around with all these other squads and start dumping games, we're going to take them out. Ken Palm doesn't take them out. AP Top 25 doesn't take them out. Coaches poll, Kiss and Heine every single day of the week. We're not going to do that here at In the Zone. We're going to give it to you straight down the line. And some people don't know anything about Colorado State. Some people never saw Iowa State. You got to go out and watch them, folks, because they're really good. And that's why you have March Madness. That's why you get these teams that are supposed to be so highly rated. They get into the NCAA tournament, and time after time, they go out the door like they're in a revolving door at Macy's. And people go, how did that happen? How is this occurring? How is this for Norton, the 9 and 13s and all these teams coming up and winning? It's because there's a lot of really good basketball being played out there. And if you only absorb into that shell of the top 25 and all of the other stuff that goes on there, which is kind of brand management in my mind.
Or does that keep the Cinderella myth alive?
It keeps it alive a little bit, but I think that they're just obscuring that whole thing as much as they can.
If this team comes out of nowhere, but you've seen them during the year and they're playing pretty good, they're not getting any publicity, that becomes their Cinderella story again.
It's like a Venn diagram almost. Like this, where you have the basketball world out here in this circle, and then you have all the people that run the basketball world in this circle. And when they say the Venn diagram, it's like they look into the overlap. Where do those two things overlap? There's very, very little overlap right now. And what you see is, and you see this in society as well, with our political class as well, you see the people aren't getting what the people want anymore. The people are no longer getting what the people want. The people are getting what the corporate side wants to give them. That's what you're receiving.
Okay.
So your Venn diagram, which should have some great intersection to it, are really just two lines that run up against each other. And the people are the ones outside. And one of the reasons I love doing this show is because I think we get to speak for that side a little bit and say, it ain't right what you're doing, and it ain't right, and you know it ain't right, and that's why you're doing it Wizard of Oz style behind the curtain. If you had any of this stuff, did you ask the people about the portal who pay all those money for those tickets? Did you ask them if they wanted the portal? No, you just opened it. Did you ask anybody if they wanted NIL? It showed up before anybody knew it existed.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
So that's where the whole thing is where the people who are supposed to be representing the people on this side of the diagram are not. Give me that money thing again, Pete. Give it to me one more time. That big old ching ching. That's what's being represented on the right side of your diagram. That's what's being held on the right side of your diagram. And it upsets people to no end. And what really upsets people about it is because they don't have any control over it. That's what really upsets people. Me as a young basketball coach, watching what happened to the game growing up, it really dismayed me. I had no control over it. That's what was frustrating to me. And I think that's what you're seeing in the sports world as well. Do they really want the NBA to look like that with no defense? I don't think they do. Were they involved in the edict that said, let's kill defense? No, they weren't, because they never would have said that. They never would have wanted that. So that Venn diagram that's supposed to maintain that healthy relationship between the two parties is now getting squashed. And you're just that's why we call it feed of fish, Pete. You got a big old mackerel being stuck right down your throat, whether you like it or not. You're going to take it, you're going to eat it, and you're going to swallow it, because that's what came out of corporate. This started years and years ago. The NCAA used to have like 5 people in it. There were like 5 guys sitting around, no computers, trying to get in a car and go visit the University of Kentucky to find out why all those dollars spilled out of that FedEx envelope. Now they have like 200,000 people working in the end. Now it's just a corporate conglomerate.
It's become a bureaucracy.
Monster.
Yep.
Bureaucracy. And out of that, very little good comes. And in the hands of fearful men and in the hands of fearful people, good can never be kept. Good can never be kept in there. You know why? Because they'll cheat. We talk about basketball all the time. Let's talk about Michigan just for a second. They just won the national title. But Harbaugh got rung up during the year for stealing people's signs. So we're willing to pay players under the table. We're willing to have guarantee games where we buy games to bring people in to get it. And then we're willing to tilt the paradigm in every single other way. And you sit there and say, you can't operate in the hands of those men. You can't operate in the hands of those people, because every single time they had their opportunity, this is why I don't like the NIL especially. I'm going to give it to you straight up. I used to like the bag men. The guys who used to take their dollars from the concession stand and roll them up into paper bags, all the pictures of the president nicely aligned, roll them up into a paper bag, put it underneath the table, and then the recruit will sign what's now the NLI. Isn't it great that they would only have the energy to just rearrange the 3 letters? They couldn't even give you 3 new letters. Instead of national letter of intent, they gave you name, image, and likeness. They didn't even change the letters. They didn't even have the respect for you to change the letters. And so here's what I'm going to tell you. I used to like the bag man, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because it created a morality, and some people did it, and some people didn't. And now what you've done is you've erased all of that morality because everybody does it. Now it's legal for them to do what they should have never done in the first place, which is to destroy amateurism. That's what they did. And they did it under the guise of virtue, which is even more pathetic if you ask me.
It's almost like this.
1 billion, gajillion, fifillion, million. Yeah.
I ask our listeners, what comes after a trillion? I don't know. I didn't go that far in math.
Somebody's going to find out soon.
So let's get back to it. We had a little bit of a segue there, but it was good. It's good because I'd like to get some of this off my chest. I really do. I think it's cathartic.
Yep.
So San Diego State's really, really good. I don't know why Ken Palm and all these other guys are down on them. They were in the Final Four last year. They're doing great stuff. They're 14-2. In the Zone has them at 7. Aztec fans, we see you. We know you're good, and we know you're going to be there at the end of the year as well. When you get ready, March Madness, and you start filling out those brackets, remember, Sutter told you about some of these teams that he's seen saying they're playing good basketball. They're playing really, really good basketball. San Diego State has had a standard going back to Coach Fisher that he started for years. It's unbelievable if you look at it. Really, really good standard. I got the Tar Heels. I love my Tar Heels. I love my Tar Heel fans. They're so passionate. If you've ever been in the Dean Dome, that's a absolute museum of basketball. It's a great place. And I got them up to 12-3 now. I got them listed 8th. I like what they're doing. R.J. Davis is carrying that team. Armando Bacot picks up his game. I think they're going to be legit. But the Cormac Ryan and the Ingram transfers that they brought in really, really solided that up. Unfortunately, they'll play Notre Dame very soon, and Cormac's going to have to play against his old team. Illinois, I moved them in. right between North Carolina and Duke. So I got Illinois at 9. They're 11-3, playing good basketball. The Terrence Shannon episode, he's their best player, one of the best in the country, somebody we would have on our draft board, I would say, in the top 20 picks. We'll see how him being out, or we'll see if his temporary restraining order is granted and he's returned to the lineup. If he returns to the lineup, I think Illinois got a really good shot to win that whole league. If not, I think they're going to struggle mightily. He's that important to them. All right, Dukies. I've been down on Dukies. Now I'm going to go back up on Dukies, okay? They looked terrible in the beginning of the year. They didn't have identity. They didn't look like they knew what they were doing. And I was very critical of Coach Shire. Even said they needed to get a Pete Gaudet in there, somebody to sit on his right hand and kind of guide and deliberate with him. I still agree with that because I think every young coach can use that. I think it's certainly beneficial. But I want to give Coach Shire some credit here, too, because he's been up, bouncing around on those sidelines. The team's playing invigorated, high vibrational basketball, really getting after it. That's one of the best home court arenas in the whole place I've been in. I've been in Cameron Indoor. I haven't been there for a game, which is on my bucket list. I got to get down there and get to a game. But the Dukies are revived, and I got them in the 10 spot. North Carolina at 8, Duke at 10. It sets up my favorite game of the year, which is coming up soon, which is the Duke-North Carolina basketball game. I cannot remember the last time that I missed one of those games, and I really, really just take the whole day, just sit down and really, really space it out. It's the second one that I really love because that's usually after my season's concluded, and I get to watch that game just in peace with a big bowl of chips and dip. All right, Iowa State, I like them. I like them. They're really, really tough. They beat Houston the other night, 12-3. They have to go through that league. They have to go through those tough road lapses that they're going to have. But I like this team. They're tough. They're tough, and they play hard. If you can beat Houston, you're tough because they just don't. Houston never gives a game away. Houston doesn't give games away. They're going to make you pack a lunch. They're going to make you bring it, and they're going to make you have it all night long. And Iowa State had it the other night. Wisconsin, 12-3. This team's proved to me, I wasn't high on them in the beginning, but this gentleman, Guard, was a Division III coach at one time, so I've always loved to see that happen. Doing good stuff with Wisconsin. I know a lot of people out in Wisconsin probably would have said he's on the hot seat right now as he enters into the season. Well, I think he cooled that off with a little Dudley Do-Right ice cube that he's sitting on right now because he's at the top of his league. Arizona, we dropped them. We dropped them way, way down. They're 12-3. They're still a good team. Going to expect a lot of good things out of them, but they absolutely have to pick up their defense. They have to play better defense. I watched them against Florida Atlantic. Their one-on-one defense where they're getting beat off the dribble, collapsing their defense, and allowing the other team to come in and option them out of that was just terrible, and they need to really keep their man in front of them a whole lot better than they do. Texas Tech, 14. We like this team. They're another team in obscurity. Not a whole lot of people are looking at them right now, but they're playing really good basketball. They're athletic. They can get after it, and they really, really push the ball and really make things happen. Oklahoma, we dropped them, and the reason we dropped them is because they dropped 2 games last week. They had been undefeated, and we were very high on them, but we dropped them all the way down to 15, and if they lose, another game or two, we're going to bounce them right out. Because we gave them the respect they deserved by being undefeated. Porter Moser, we were very high on him, but that's a terrific league, a terrible road slate that they're going to have to go out against. And so I want to see how they fashion from here on out. But they're still 13-2, so we're going to keep them in the top 25. Kansas, we moved them down. You got no business losing to Central Florida. Johnny Dawkins, great win. Kansas, 16. I think they're a good team, but they do have some weaknesses. Duke has weaknesses. Kansas has weaknesses. I guess you could say that about every team. Houston has some scoring deficiencies, so you could pick and choose every team. Purdue has some issues of basketball chemistry where they're trying to make all those pieces fit. So there's always different stuff going on with all these different teams. But right now, I haven't seen a team that's really, really emerged and said that this is the group. And if I had to pick one right now, really, really had to pick one, I probably would say UConn, because I think they're better on the offensive efficiency side than Houston is. And if I'd love to watch that game. That'd be a great game. But I would pick UConn right now as probably the best team in the country. I know UConn fans are going to like that. BYU, we had them very high, very high. They were one of our undefeateds, and then just boom, boom, boom. out go the lights. They lost 3 in a row. They're sliding down. They went from top 10. Some people still have them up in their top 10. No way, not after losing 3 games in a row like that.
Yeah, how can you be in the top 10 losing 3 in a row?
I kept them in the top 15, 17, but I'm not impressed with them the way they're sliding right now either. They're in the Big 12. They're in that conference that they have no business being in the first place, and now you're going to see they're probably going to get slapped around a little bit going at the end of this conference run. That's just a guess. Mississippi State, Chris Jans, he's done a great job with this team, 12-3. There's a lot of controversy about this guy, but he's a good basketball coach. He gets his teams to play, and they win. Colorado State, they were undefeated. They got bounced around a little bit. They were 13-1. They're 13-3. I'm going to keep them in for now because I like to let people know that some of these teams are doing good stuff that are really out there. But if they keep on schneiding, we're going to get rid of them. Nevada is 15-1. Now, Ken Palm has them in like 35 range. Yeah, he has them at 35. They're 15-1. They play a big-time schedule. I'm going to push them up. I'm going to put them at 20, and we're going to watch them. I like this team a lot. 21, the Memphis Tigers. Right now they're 12-2, playing good basketball. Survived an overtime game last night against Texas San Antonio. They got a good group though, and they're athletic. They got Penny Hardaway as their coach, and they used to have Larry Brown as his kind of Pete Gaudette. I don't know that Brown is there anymore. I don't think Larry Brown is there anymore. Matter of fact, I know he's not. But they have done a pretty good job with this team and keeping them, because discipline is always tough for Memphis. Being disciplined in this basketball sense is always tough for them. And I think that they're showing a little bit of that because they want to be good. TCU at 12-3. I like this team a lot. I'm going to go to the mayor. They call him the mayor, Freddie Hoiberg, Nebraska team, 13-3. They knocked off Purdue the other day. They knocked off Purdue and did it in good fashion. He's got that place excited about basketball, which if anybody remembers, going back into the 80s, Nebraska was the number 1 football team in the country for years and years and years. They were Alabama before Alabama.
Yep.
And so now you have their football program has fallen way, way, way off onto the wayside. And to have their basketball program come up in the league that they're in and resurrect, I think it's really, really good because that's not like a ripe recruiting base. You're out there in Nebraska. It used to be a football school. The winters out there aren't any fun, I can assure you of that. And moving around out there in the winter is difficult as well, too. So I'm going to give them their due. 13-3. I'm going to put them in there for a bit. And they had a great win the other night. So I like Utah State here. I was concerned about Creighton, Utah State. Creighton's got 4 losses. I don't want them. I'm going to put Utah State in there at 15-1. All right, Creighton, you had your chance to stick around. If you had 3 losses, I'd throw you in. But you have 4. You're heading into the Big East. We know what's going to happen there when you get to New York, get to New Jersey, coming out of Nebraska on those long, long trips. It's going to be really, really difficult. I think you're going to get scuffed up a little bit. You got to go to Villanova. Every single trip for that team in the Big East is a long, long trip. Every single one. We have to play St. John's, get on a plane, go home. Now we got to play Seton Hall, get on a plane, go home. Now we got to go and play Villanova a couple of weeks later, get on a plane, go home. These trips are unbelievable. And people I know in the business call it the John Thompson rule for a certain reason I won't get into right now. But you have to be, legally, you have to be in the same city the day before the game for an NCAA game, so there won't be weather cancellations. I'm sure that's a television provision in their contract, but they need to be there the day before. And so now you're adding all of these. Now, some of them are flying private. Some of them are on charters, so they can get in and get out without too much to do. But talk about taxing your team. And I just started doing something on what's called Substack. And Substack allows you to write articles and put in your own article.
Yep.
Okay, so my first article is going to come up on Substack this week, and it's called Name, Image, and Loco. And it's all about the NIL. My second one, I think I'm going to get deeper into this top 25 weapons of mathematical destruction, as I refer to them, and really, really get deep into this. In my 25 spot, I'm putting Dayton. Atlantic 10, they're doing really good stuff. I like this guy as a coach. 12-2. They're good. They beat UMass the other night, but UMass ain't doing too bad either. All right, here's our Ken Palm LOL segment. Going to go through it quick because we only got about a minute left. All right, Ken Palm LOL. It means, what are you talking about here? They have a mathematical algorithm which shows you this is what we should do, this is how we do it, and we go from there. And then you sit there and say, wow, that didn't work because they have 5 losses. How could they be in the top 10? You know, you just got to use a human touch every once in a while. Maybe a paintbrush, you know, go over
Little
that little
tweak.
paintbrush and just kind of filter in some of the real human information. Let's go. They have Tennessee at number 6. Cray. Okay? They just lost to Mississippi State. I don't get it. Alabama at 9 and they're number 8 at 10-5. Are you kidding? 10-5. Michigan State at 17 at 9-6. Don't get it. Marquette 18. They're 11-6 right now. I'm sure they're going to go below 18 after the loss they had last night. Villanova he has at 26 at 10-5, and they lost to every single person in Philadelphia so far this year. They used to dominate Philadelphia. They dumped Philadelphia this year. But Ken Palm says 26. Crazy. Princeton's 13-1. Here's a team you want to watch if you want to get ready for your bracket. Minnesota, 13-3. I like this team. UMass, locally, Coach Martin has them at 11-4, doing pretty good. Mississippi, 13-1. Ken Palm has them at 84. Pete, we'll see you next week. We're in the zone. That's it. Fastest hour in college hoops.